Adechebia ne nsɛm a kyese ekoso ewo omamu Ghana eno ene kyese mo ankasa mo de hye maboaboa nsɛm ne bi ano a kyese mede bi ebedom na ene dai de yebo ewuram bia na kyese yebo afri eye court akache ena nsɛm bi a efa eye Alban Bagbin Speaker of Parliament abeto eye apawa so ena kyese mo nso mo de hye maboa ano a mi be gem na kyese mo nso adwenkyebia o mo won Mojane ewe comment section ase ede ama me kasa enye tete kame ho na yenkotie nseme bi.
The NPP caucus in Parliament makes another attempt and perhaps a final move to reassemble Parliament to consider what has long been described as urgent matters. In a letter cited by Ghana Tonight's Majority Leader Alexander Penyumakin asks Speaker Alban Bagbin to recall the House to address critical government businesses. Now, this is the third time Penyumakin makes this request on the Speaker. The previous two times, he and his caucus failed to show up over disagreements of certain places and a lack of statement of business, a situation that forced the Speaker to adjourn the gathering. Now, as is expected, we want to show you some of the crucial government business matters to be considered as the NPP caucus, led by the Majority Leader Alexander Penyumakin, make another request on the Speaker of Parliament. Now, the request for tax exemptions for designated beneficiaries under the One District, One Factory program, Ghana Financial Stability Fund, and International Development Association facility of $250 million. We also know about the consideration of the President's nomination for appointment as justices of the Supreme Court. There's also the ratification, very important, of mining lease agreement between Ghana and the Ashanti Bauxite Company Limited for the mining of bauxite in the Nyinahim Block 2 area in the Chuma Mpunia district of the Ashanti region. Then the ratification of the mining lease agreement between Ghana and Barari DV Ghana Limited for the exploitation of lithium at Isuyam in the central region. Then there's also the bills including the Environmental Protection Agency Bill 2024, really crucial bill because that is the one that will make amendments to stop exploration in forest areas or mining in forest areas, to be precise. And then the Social Protection Bill 2023. Indeed. But one last thing before we chat about this issue or issues that have come up. The Majority Leader also proposes next Thursday, November 28th and Friday, November 29th, 2024 as suitable dates for the emergency recall. We can now have a chat on the back of this latest development in a tad. We should have Bosa South MP, Dr. Clement Park, join our conversation. In the meantime, let me bring in Samir Obeng. Samir Obeng is Executive Director for let me take a look at that. Executive Director of the Parliamentary Network Africa. Sami, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us here. I know you've been waiting patiently for us. I do appreciate your patience. But let's talk about this third recall. How does that come to you? What do you think about it?
Good evening and thanks for having me. I was particularly surprised that this a request was actually put through because anyone who watches Parliament and knows how Parliament operates, seeing that we're just 2 weeks to elections, knows that it is almost practically impossible to expect that Parliament will be able to reconvene and have any meaningful conversations before election day. And so to have the Supreme Court deliver its verdict about a week ago, and to have the Majority Leader wait for another extra week before sending in this request. And to send in this request, it is important to note, however, that this request is not even on the back of the emergency recall provision of the Constitution, as was used in the first two instances. But in this particular request, the leader is actually asking Mr. Speaker to exercise his prerogative as Speaker to summon the House, not necessarily through the emergency recall, summon the House regularly, which means that now it rests with Mr. Speaker, so to do. I think that practically it's a challenge. I really do not see how it's possible to get members of parliament leaving their constituencies and coming to Accra to sit at a time when about 80% of them are seeking re-elections, and they know the risk of what will happen in their respective constituencies if they leave without necessarily campaigning in the next couple of days.
I see. And if by your explanation this is left at the discretion of the Speaker, do you expect the Speaker at this point to reconvene the House?
Well, considering the logistics required, considering the timing in which we are, considering the experiences of the Speaker, considering the situation we find ourselves in, I really do not think that practically we should expect a recall of the House. I've always maintained that Parliament's mandate, the 8th Parliament's mandate, expires on the midnight of January 6th. Which means that even after elections, if Parliament is minded so to do, it can still have up to about 1 full month, which can do a lot of the many things that Parliament has on its agenda before this current 8th Parliament, has its tenure expiring. I really do not see Parliament coming back before elections, but I think that there is a lot that can be done after elections and before the Parliament gets dissolved.
I mean, and by that, it pops up the question, why the rush? Why at this very crucial time when a lot of the members of Parliament are on the field campaigning? When you think around that, what comes up for you?
Well, it's difficult to note, and I think that perhaps the majority leader will be best placed to answer this. But I honestly think that if this was put in place much earlier, I mean, we've had the Supreme Court's verdict. Mind you, his petition is literally hinged on the Supreme Court's verdict. We've had the verdict for almost 1 full week, so why would we have 1 week literally wasted, so to speak, before making in this request? Could it also be that the leader has been trying to engage with the Speaker on the back and he's not having any results from the backroom conversations, and so now needs to make it official so that he can have the benefit of the paper trail to be able to show for it? There are so many angles that we will not be able to answer. Perhaps we need to find out more detail about this from the majority leader, but I question the practicality of Parliament coming to sit before elections.
Sami, will the NPP caucus and the majority leader have themselves to blame if this emergency recall request is not granted?
I think that the route, the approach, the strategy, Parliament is as much about the standing orders, the orders of Parliament, as it is also about strategy, because, it's a house of politics. It's a house that records matter. It's a house that rules matter. And you have to have a combination of all of these to be able to get the kind of results that you require. I really will be surprised if the majority leader in this particular request was expecting or will be expecting anything extraordinary to happen before elections.
I see. And listen, you talk about the fact that there is that transitional, not transitional period, but the period after the voting, after December 7th, they have a full month until the Parliament expires on January 6th midnight. Could it be the case that the majority leader perhaps is worried about activities that could take place within that transitional period?
Well, I'm wondering which one makes for a better timing for engagement by a group of people who have majority of them needing to seek re-elections. Whether it is the period before elections or the period after elections, which, yes, understandably will have activities such as the Christmas holidays and what have you. But we've seen Parliament sitting on Saturdays. We've seen Parliament sitting on Mondays when push comes to shove. And for me, I think that is the more practical approach that should be looked at.
I see. And there will also be the matter of certain places again, I mean, so to speak, if Parliament reconvenes, or even if everything ends and they come back after the December 7th polls to the chamber. I mean, what do you foresee? Do you see us go back to what we have seen in the last 3-4 weeks, or you have different expectations of the members of Parliament?
So far as I'm concerned, until the matter that was ruled on by the Supreme Court is challenged through a review, I believe that the matter is really settled. And for me, my expectation would be that upon Parliament coming back, whether it's before elections or after elections, depending on when Mr. Speaker recalls the House, Mr. Speaker has a responsibility to make that announcement for the purpose of the records, to reflect that this is the ruling that has been probably served on him as a Speaker from the Supreme Court, and the consequence of the ruling is that the status quo prior to all of these disturbances is reverted to. And I know that with the experience of Mr. Speaker and the experiences also of the parliamentary service, the clerks and all of that supports the Speaker in the discharge of his duties, these should be issues that they should settle on once the House gets reconvened.